From a man who goes to the local observatory and asks the astrophysicist what his rising sign is and will Mercury retrograde be bad this month, this is the Daniel Natal Show. In November, the New American will be sending journalists to Egypt to report on the COP27 conference that will take place there. It's the United Nations' climate change event, and it's short for the Conference of the Parties. You might remember an earlier COP conference which resulted in the Kyoto Protocols back in 1997. Well, this is the 27th one of those things, so I decided to brush up on it by reading on their new Human Development Report 2021 to 2022. I'm only on page 20 or so of the 300-page document, and I can already tell that it's going to be painful reading. Right off the bat, it's filled with contradictions and double talk. On the one hand, they write, development is perhaps better seen as a process characterized both by adopting an unfolding unknown reality and by purposefully transforming economies and societies to ease planetary pressures and advance inclusion. So they say inclusion is all important. Then they write, among many things the COVID-19 pandemic broke open was our imaginations. It expanded the reference points for what is possible, see Chapter 5. Consider the rapid development and distribution in many but not all countries of safe, effective COVID-19 vaccines, some based on new mRNA technologies that hold promise for preventing and treating many other diseases. The pandemic normalized paid sick leave, voluntary social distancing, and self-isolation, all important for our response to future pandemics. So we're going to get more inclusion by being more isolated? They're vaunting self-isolation like it's a wonderful thing. In another example, they write, nor were they ever intended to reflect the full concept of human development, which goes well beyond achievements in well-being, such as reducing poverty or hunger, to include equally important notions of freedoms and agency, which together expand the sense of possibility in people's lives. So agency is good, they say, and then they add, losing perceived control rather than simply not having it in the first place has its own negative consequences, as do the knock-on effects. A tendency to identify culprits or villains, a distrust of institutions and elites, and greater insularity, nationalism, and social discord. Uncertainty can turn up the heat on a toxic brew. So agency is good, but nationalism, which is you having agency, is bad? And if you think they misspoke about taking your agency away, see this passage. In an age of layered and interacting uncertainties, freedoms may not translate reliably into desired achievements or outcomes. This is the unfortunate news. So freedoms, they say, may not translate into desired achievements or outcomes. This is unfortunate news. In other words, your freedoms will get in the way of their plans, so your freedoms have to go. They praise diversity, writing, education can be a powerful tool to open the potential for new perspectives in younger generations. Not just through curricula, but also by envisaging schools and spaces of inclusion and diversity. Then after lionizing diversity, they write, the uncoordinated responses to the COVID-19 pandemic are a case in point. New strategies are needed for tail events synchronized at the global level. So we'll get more diversity in a system by having coordinated, synchronized, one-size-fits-all solutions to problems. A decentralized, responsive approach would build more system robustness. One-size-fits-all solutions make systems rigid, fragile. Yet that's what they're calling for. Stereotyped oligarch-mandated responses to things from bureaucrats thousands of miles away from the source of any problem. Instead of local autonomy or agency to adjust measures to the local situation, all discretion will be removed from them, and all power placed in the hands of an unaccountable technocratic elite. Basically, all the power and none of the responsibility. This is like that phrase, to the man with a hammer, all problems look like nails. The oligarchs see hammers, pliers, wrenches, screwdrivers, and say, we need to rein in all this incoherence. From now on, all tools will be hammers, and all other tools will be banned. How's that going to work out? Kate Raworth in Donut Economics said that our last financial crash happened because of too much concentration of power and centralization within the system. It wasn't diverse enough to be able to absorb the shocks. Like in architecture, a building that doesn't bend breaks. Centralization leads to system fragility.
Efficiency occurs when a system streamlines and simplifies its resource flow to achieve its aims, say by channeling resources directly between the larger nodes. Resilience, however, depends upon diversity and redundancy in the network, which means that there are ample alternative connections and options in times of shock or change. Too much efficiency makes a system vulnerable, as global financial regulators realized too late in 2008, while too much resilience makes it stagnant. Vitality and robustness lie in a balance between the two. What design principles can nature's thriving networks teach us for creating thriving economies? In 2 words, diversity and distribution. If large-scale actors dominate an economic network by squeezing out the number and diversity of small and medium players, the result will be a highly unequal and brittle economy. This certainly sounds familiar, given the current scale of corporate concentration across many industrial sectors, from agribusiness, pharmaceuticals, and the media, to the banks that are deemed too big to fail. As Gerner and colleagues point out, the fragility generated by such concentration is reviving appreciation for the small, diverse enterprises that make up the bulk of an economy's network.
Note how she said that resilience in a system depends on diversity and redundancy in the network. Redundancy, like how the United States has 50 mini-governments, or like how the planet has 195 different countries. The oligarchs don't like those kind of redundancies. They were angry, for instance, that countries like Sweden didn't have lockdowns, or that governors like Rick DeSantis flouted their Chicken Little theater and kept his state open. They wanted a blanket one-size-fits-all coordinated global response, one that was indifferent to variations on the ground, that took no account of them, or of system dynamism. Obedience and conformity are more important to them than efficacy. And here's your tip-off, that the end goal is not about global hygiene campaigns, but about control. The manufactured crisis is just a pretext to install the underlying infrastructure for tyranny. It kind of reminds me of Tendencies and Tensions of the Information Age by Shemin and Curtis. In their book, they talk about technology and how increasingly it's not so much an information revolution as a control revolution. Needless to say, wish me luck in getting through the rest of this mind-numbing document, written by double-talking charlatans for a target audience which apparently doesn't have developed critical thinking faculties. Conversations That Matter, hosted by Alex Newman, interviews key people with important information to share that they, big government, don't want you to hear. Information that might save your life and family, literally, as well as your liberty. Check it out on thenewamerican.com.